The views and opinions of the following show do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of News Talk 1450 WOL, Radio 1 Incorporated, or their management.
Welcome to Beyond Just Talk. This is a positive, inspirational, and thought-provoking program that discusses life and business topics from a solution-oriented perspective with your host, S.L. Young.
All right, welcome. It's another great day, and we're ready to discuss subjects that will make a difference in your day. This is the place that people connect, ideas are shared, and lives are enriched. My name is Stacey Young. My author's name is S.L. Young, but please call me Sly. Before we get started today, next week, my guest is a comedian who has toured the globe with some of entertainment's most bankable names, had many on-screen television appearances, and is an ambassador for the Sickle Cell Disease Association of America. For this week, we'll recap last week's show, visit with Torrey Berry, someone I recently met in an unlikely encounter, have a conversation with Beth Jannery, an experienced writing professional, and preview next week's guest. On last week's show, I had a couple of very interesting guests. My first guest last week was Isaac Jones, who is a former at-risk student who shared information about the issues that led to his learning challenges. Mr. Jones discussed the dangers of looking at someone's past as a reason to project limitations on their future, similar to the way it was done with him. Mr. Jones is now an author, inspirational speaker, and he's working on his doctorate degree. In his new book, The Hand I Was Dealt, Failure Doesn't Have to Be Final, he details his path to academic success. If you'd like to read his book, it's available for purchase on his website at isaacjones.net. That's ISSACJONES.net and Amazon.com. My featured guest last week was Christine Holt, who is a Dean of Academic Administration at the Northern Virginia Community College, fondly known as NOVA. Dean Holt detailed her plan into academia, which wasn't a direct path. However, the experiences from her legal career were building blocks to her success, along with developing skills that she uses in her current job. She emphasized the importance of having cross-functional knowledge and being a leader who is willing to do whatever it takes to support their team. No status exemptions allowed. Also, Dean Holt discussed the often overlooked value of a community college education, along with highlighting the many valuable services NOVA provides to its population. If you missed either of these conversations, you can listen to it on my website at slyoung.com/bjt-radio.html. Now, I welcome my first guest today for my new occasional segment called Let's Make an Introduction. The individual I'm about to introduce is someone I met by happenstance last Friday as I was about to take the metro. As I started to enter the metro station, I heard some music that caught my attention, which made me stop, even though I was in a hurry. A gentleman was playing a guitar and wasn't singing, he was singing, as it's sometimes said. I walked over to say hello, and after a brief conversation, I asked him if he wanted to be on my show, which he said yes. And then I asked and received approval to record his performance to review later, which I posted to YouTube and on my show's page on Facebook. Before our conversation ended, I told him to send me an email the same day if he wanted to be on my show to test his desire to capitalize on this potential opportunity with an unknown outcome. He not only sent me an email, he sent it to me within an hour after our discussion, which is the reason that he's in studio with me today. The interesting thing is that he's not the first musician that I stopped and gave the same offer, although he's the first one to take action. Sometimes opportunity only knocks once, and you must be ready to answer because you never can project the value of taking a chance to risk yourself to a moment that could be life-changing. My mentor, Maggie Linton, said to me after I thanked her for her support, "I opened the door, but you had to go stand in it." Well, today, I'm pleased to say that this young man decided to stand in the door that I opened. I now welcome a man with an energetic spirit, a soulful voice, and someone who will one day be a musical star. Torrey Berry, welcome to Beyond Just Talk.
How's it going, Sly?
It's going well. So it's sort of crazy, the chain of events over the last few days, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so as I said, I was walking along and I saw you and I was like, man, there's something about this guy. There's something about this music. I've got to have a conversation with you. And I know when we first had our conversation, you sort of like gave me that look like, Like, who are you? But it was sort of more like, what did you talk about, Wallace?
Yeah.
and then so we had a little bit of a conversation. I told you about my show, and I was really excited because once I got to the place that I was going, I checked my phone, even though my phone was on mute, and I saw that I got a message from you, and I said, this guy wants to be found.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that I'm having an opportunity to introduce you in a more public way today. So how often do you play at the Metro station?
Every now and then. Like right now I'm playing because I'm actually between jobs right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm doing that to make a little bit of extra money on the side. But I used to play like every other weekend, just go out and practice, jam out.
Right. Just by yourself or with others?
I have not gone out with others, but I wouldn't be opposed to that at all.
Right. Always looking for opportunities to partner, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so do you normally play at a specific location?
I like to play Crystal City a lot. Crystal City has a really good sound. Pentagon City also has a pretty good sound.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Crystal City's kind of like a second home to me to play.
Yeah, I think the sound was good there. But one of the things that I told folks after I uploaded your video, I said, it probably isn't the best acoustics in there. I said, wait till you hear this guy with a high-quality microphone and really doing his thing. I said, then you'll really get to hear the value of his voice. But I was excited nonetheless with what I heard right there. So how long do you normally play while you're at the Crystal City Metro stop or Pentagon City?
I just play till I feel like stopping.
Yeah.
Sometimes it'll be a couple of hours. Sometimes it'll be a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
It really just depends on how I'm feeling that day, or whether Metro Transit decides that it's time for me to leave.
Well, one of the things that you told us in our earlier conversation is that sometimes you're down there and all of a sudden you're down there for hours because you don't even realize the time because you get so lost in what you're doing because you enjoy it so much, right?
Yeah, that's definitely true. I get lost in my music all the time, and I'll just sit there and play for like 3 or 4 hours and not notice it. I'll look at my phone and be like, oh, I have like 15 missed calls. All these text messages from people wondering where I'm at.
Yeah, so why did you decide to start playing at the Metro station?
Initially, honestly, I had just moved to this area, and I didn't have a job yet, and I was just working out. I knew I could play. I knew I sounded good, so I figured I'd go out there and just check it out, see what could come of it. And sometime around Christmas, I was out playing, and I made like a really good amount of money just sitting there jamming out. So I figured, I could make this a regular thing.
Okay, and then, so have you received any opportunities while playing there?
I've gotten a lot of response. I've gotten a lot of people take my card and give me their cards, but nothing's really gone anywhere until just now, actually. So,
I'm sure that this is going to be the beginning of many opportunities. And one of the things that's quite interesting is as I arrived in today, what I found was that he was actually playing in the break room. And what someone told me when I came in, they said, you have a singer on today. I said, yeah. I said, how does he sound? He said, yeah, he sounds pretty good. And then when I walked back and I came in the back, he was already having a conversation with someone else because they heard him playing and warming up. And then all of a sudden, he's going to be involved with another activity. And then as we were starting to talk, and there were some other folks back there, I had a conversation with someone else. And now I might have another opportunity to partner with some folks with some community outreach activities. And so it's just amazing. When you give somebody an opportunity, you never know what the benefits are for that person, but you also don't know what the benefits are for yourself as well. And we're going to talk about that more later in the show with my other guest that's on. Do you perform anywhere else besides the Metro?
I have performed at bars and, clubs and whatnot, but I haven't done anything recently because I spent some time in New York and I just got back into the area. But I'm actually looking to get booked now. I feel like I've probably got enough material to play at least an hour or so, maybe like an opening set for somebody. I could definitely get back into gigging. I've missed the stage.
Yeah, well, I think that's a great segue. If you don't mind, are you ready to play something for my audience?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, give us a sample of some.
This is actually a song that I wrote. It's called Raindance.
I can feel it in the air. There's a storm a-coming. Put a roof over your head. There ain't no point in running, 'cause it's gonna rain. It's gonna rain. It's gonna rain. And when it rains, it pours. Clouds are rolling through the sky. It's time to face the music. You don't need a reason why. Just go on and do it. 'Cause it's gonna rain. It's gonna rain. It's gonna rain. And when it rains, it pours.
All right, folks, that's a sample of what Torrey has to offer, and I hope that you enjoyed that as much as we did here in studio. Man, oh man, I know you're going to be big. I know it.
I hope so.
No, I know it. You got to believe it, right?
Oh, yeah,
You got to
definitely.
believe it.
I'm claiming it right now.
Talk it into existence, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so how can folks get a hold of you to book you for an engagement?
I've got my cell phone. You can always call my phone. My number.
Well, maybe you have an email address. Maybe
I've got an email address too. Yeah, I probably shouldn't be giving out my number on the radio.
Yeah.
My email address is utbt16@gmail. So you can definitely contact me there if you want to book me or for whatever else.
Okay, great. So thanks for being on today. Best of luck with your future endeavors. Torrey's journey is another example of an individual who realized that you can't wait for opportunity to arrive. Instead, you have to go out and pursue it. By being available, by taking risks, he provided himself with an opportunity to be discovered, which led him to be in the studio with me today. It's too often said that someone gets lucky, but the thing that's not always taken into consideration or realized is that there were usually many years of preparation that led to someone having a chance to achieve their goals of success. Luck many times happens at the intersection of opportunity and preparedness. So are you ready? Just a little food for thought. We'll be back right after the break.
Updates on the web at WOLDCnews.com.
Good morning. This WL Traffic Update is brought to you by Arnold Bread. Accident downtown is still there on K Street Northwest between 12th and 13th Street. 295 southbound, so from Benning Road down to East Capitol Street. Around the Beltway, we're doing better now. No more delays from College Park to Silver Spring. Took a while to ease that up this morning, but right now we're looking pretty good through there. Arnold Whole Grains Bread is packed with whole grains, giving you the whole grain nutrition you need and the tastes you love. Arnold Whole Grains Bread, packed with whole grains. Now your WOL weather forecast brought to you by Horseshoe Casino, Baltimore. For today, clouds and sun, could see a shower off and on, high near 88. Scattered showers overnight down to 70. Tomorrow, a mix of clouds and sun again and a stray thunderstorm possible, a high near 88. Join them this Saturday at the Red, White, and Barbecue with all you can drink, dining, and dancing to live entertainment. Tickets on sale now at Ticketmaster.com. It's 78 degrees in Washington, D.C. now. Steve Hirschhorn for News Talk 1450 WOL, where information is power.
Welcome back to Beyond Just Talk with your host, S.L. Young.
Wow. Right before the break, we had the great opportunity to hear Torrey Berry and enjoy some of his music. Folks, if you definitely want to help this guy out, definitely contact him and let's get this guy booked. Let's get this guy discovered. He definitely has talent, and I really hope that someone will pick up the phone and call him and get him booked and launch his career. Also, folks, I just want to remind you, if you'd like to connect with me after the show, you can reach me on my website at slyoung.com, on Facebook at facebook.com/beyondjusttalk, or locate me on Twitter, Google+, Instagram, and SoundCloud using the handle SLYoungVA. As for the rest of today's show, we'll discuss the journey my next guest took before writing her first novel, learn about the motivations for her writing, and discuss the reasons she sought a publisher versus being an indie author, and learn about the process she used to obtain a publisher. Before I introduce today's guest, I want listeners to know that if you'd like to join our conversation, please dial 1-800-450-7876. My guest today, Beth Jannery, has written several books about learning to live a meaningful life and a couple of page-turner paperback novels. Her books include The Admiral's Daughter, Finding Grace Again, Shut the Hell Up, 101 Reasons to Appreciate Your Life, Simple Grace, Living a Meaningful Life, What's the Story? The Art of Writing and Communication. And earlier in her career, she was a communications officer at Harvard University and worked in CNN's investigative unit. Now, without further ado, I welcome my guest, who is one of the winds beneath my wings, a former journalist who covered the Pentagon, an author, and the director of journalism at the George Mason University, Beth Jannery. Welcome to Beyond Just Talk.
Hi, Sly. Thank you. What a pleasure to be here, and I am honored to follow that musician. Wow.
Isn't it something?
Unbelievable. So my morning starts off. I walk into the studio, and by the way, bravo to you and congratulations, because you're like a block from Discovery Communication, amazing restaurants right nearby. I mean, you're living the life. So I walk into the studio, and this guy who says he's between jobs is jamming to one of my favorite songs, and I'm hoping maybe we'll find a moment where he can play it later, but it's that song, Just the Two of Us.
Yeah, one of my favorites
in the
too.
Sky.
Yeah.
And I got goosebumps. I call them God bumps. You know,
Right.
when you get those bumps on your arm.
Yeah.
So what a treat this morning. Thank you.
Well, you know, just before we even get started with talking about you, we might as well share another story and about how we actually met. And so,
Love it. Let's do it.
It's sort of funny because what happened was last August, I had shared with my friends and family on Facebook about my battle with depression and near suicide last March. And a week after that, I went on the Maggie Linton show and I shared my story and very publicly. And that was a lot harder than I thought it was. But about a month after that, what happened was I started writing, or actually a few weeks after that, I started writing about my experiences with depression and submitted some of my articles to the Huffington Post. And then they said, okay, would you like to write for us? Or at least write on their blog, because I don't write for them per se. But then I immediately said, you know what? I have this great opportunity. I started writing on my website about a year earlier, just threw some stuff out there and just started writing and didn't know what was going to happen. And then a year later, here I have this incredible opportunity without any writing training to start writing on the Huffington Post. So it's just a part of who I am. I immediately said, well, I need to share my story with others who could benefit from it. So I reached out to a couple of professors at a few local universities, and nobody returned my call. Except
for me.
Except there was one person that returned my call, and that was Beth Jannery. And that actually was a moment that changed my life. And just a quick story before we get into your background is, when I came in there, she actually gave me some words of encouragement after my first session. I didn't know her. We had just met in person for the first time. And she came up to me and said how wonderful my presentation was and gave me a hug. And one of the things that she said to me...
So professional of me.
Exactly. But it was okay. But what she said to me was that you let your ego go. And that was something that I had never thought about. And then probably about a month later, we got together and we had lunch. And then we were just having a conversation. And then she provided so much more inspiration for me that gave me some ideas and thoughts that I hadn't even considered. And let me tell you, folks, I don't believe in chance encounters. Folks come into your life at different times and different reasons and different seasons for reasons that we just don't understand at the time. But here's where it gets a little crazier. Because in late January, early February of this year, one of her students who was interning at a PR firm contacted me because he was working with a client, and their client was the executive chairman and chairman of the board of CACI. And he asked me if I would want to interview him. And I said, sure, right? And then so I told him yes, and then nothing came out of that. But here's what it gets even weirder. The next week, I saw an email from the university that I graduated from, the George Washington University. And I saw this email that said that the same guy that he asked me to interview was going to be at GW. And I said, this is a sign. So I'm going to GW. So I went to GW to find this guy, sat in because, there was a book signing also. So I said, I'm going to have an opportunity to get close to him, listened to the session, had my book in hand, waited at the end of the line so that I make sure that I had plenty of time to have a conversation with him. Went up there, asked him to sign my book. He signed my book. And at the end, I said, I'm a blogger. I write about a lot of different things, including ethics. Do you mind if I interview you? And he said, give your card to these, those folks over there. And I thought that was like the kiss of death. But 3 or 4 weeks later, I ended up interviewing him, and never would I have imagined that was even a possibility. And then about a month after that, I ended up interviewing Rashawn McDonald. But this long story to say, because I was willing to give of myself to Beth, and then Beth was willing to share her knowledge and inspiration about the things that I was communicating and the things that she thought that she could help me with, led to another opportunity by putting myself out there and making myself available. So while I'm here with Beth, because I have not had an opportunity to publicly do this for her, Beth, I thank you very much for allowing me to come in, because that moment where you allowed me to come in your classroom, and I'm sort of starting to welt up a little bit here, but that moment that you allowed me to come into your classroom and present to your students changed my life. So I'm forever thankful for that. So thank you.
I'm so touched right now. I mean, those life-changing moments. Thank you for sharing that story, because I didn't know all of those details. But I do remember that day I got contacted by this Huffington Post blogger, and then you shared the story with me about being suicidal, and look at you today. You have your own radio show, and look at you giving back. You have this young man in here who has beautiful eyes, by the way. You've got to check out his Instagram, people. I'm not kidding. This guy's going to be big, and his music. But now you're giving back to someone else, and we don't always know when those moments happen. And we can do one of two things. We can choose to embrace that, or we can go on in our ego-filled day and walk right by the person and not offer to help. And I'm hoping that somebody today's listening who might want to write a book. Or who might have something that they've been wanting to do, but they feel afraid and they feel fear. Mm-hmm. And I really hope that maybe something I say is going to help push them through that fear. I certainly was afraid many, many times, many moments in life. And through that pain, through that fear is when we start to produce, the beautiful creations of life. And we have those moments. So I'm hopeful for today.
Well, I'm hopeful for all of our futures. And then the thing that you just brought up that's really significant is when we have those dark moments, if we don't run from them, but we allow ourselves to step back and really reflect upon them, those are opportunities to identify something else that might be our true passions. Because through the challenges that I've gone through dealing with workplace bullies and folks that are unethical in organizations and refusing to be a part of that, it has now allowed me to discover my true passion. And my true passion is teaching, even though I do it through writing, through this radio show, and through blogging. Sometimes when we have those difficult moments, they can either break us or make us. And it's a choice. And we always have to remember that.
Let's choose to not have them break us.
Exactly.
Have them make us. And all of those no's, especially being a writer or being a musician, you will get so many no's, so many rejection letters, so many thanks but no thanks. And I'll talk a little bit later in the show about one mentor I had in particular, this incredible editor who lives in New York City, and he told me just some amazing advice that I hope I get a chance to pass on today.
And our conversation right now just reminds me is that when you think that you're broken and you don't have anything else to give, and maybe I need this reminder right now myself, is that you can always get up and you still have a little bit more to give, because we're really a lot stronger than we are. We just allow ourselves, or maybe sometimes we convince ourselves that we're not strong and we're ready to give up. And so there's a powerful lesson in all of this. I think we all have some unique stories. So there's some really great energy here today. So before we continue on,
Sure.
Who is Beth Jannery?
Oh, gosh. Okay, well, first I'll tell you, I'm a former journalist. So to have the interview turned on me is so uncomfortable. I like to be in control, asking all the questions. So this is good for me. It pushes my comfort zone. I am, first I'm a mom, and I'm a spiritual woman. I am a writer and a teacher and a daughter and a friend. I have the credentials, right? So they say it takes a decade to make you an expert in whatever you do. And I have a couple of decades of experience in communication. So I'm the director at George Mason University, so the journalism program. Mm-hmm. So if there's anyone out there who's thinking they might want to go back to college or something like that, keep my email, and we'll get you all my contact information at the end. I'd love to get a few people applying to our program who think, maybe I want to be a writer, maybe I want to be a journalist, but they're just waiting for that push. So maybe we'll get that push today. And right now I'm a novelist. And I'm remembering a time when I was at graduate school at Boston University. I was in my early 20s. And there was little did I know at the time, there was a woman there. I believe her name was Professor Carol Rivers, and she's a writer. And she was also a professor. And I remember just admiring her and just thinking, wow, I want to be who she is. I want that life. Could I ever be a journalist and then one day be a mom and then one day be a writer? And she had all these novels, and I was always nonfiction writing. But there was this moment when I decided I kept hearing this calling. Mm-hmm. I heard the name of the book even, Finding Grace Again. And I said, why don't I just try writing a novel? Let me just try. And and today now I'm a professor, a mom of 2 daughters, and a novelist, and it blows me away. I can't even believe this is my life.
So was writing something that you always wanted to do?
I always I'm a storyteller. I love people's stories. I love hearing about especially broken people or the underdog and how they find that resilience within and change their life. I'm really drawn to those kinds of stories. So in all of my novels, there's a handful of characters that I like some of them. I don't like all of them, but I love them. I love them so much. And they're strong, and they're fearless, and they're fierce, and they're fighters. Uh-huh. And so that's what I'm really drawn to, writing about, situations like loss and, those moments when we can go this way or we can go that way. We can make it or break it. We'll talk more about that in a few, I guess.
Yeah, so I think it's a great time to go out to a break, and we'll catch up with Beth right on the other side.
$14.50 WOL. This report brought to you by Dollar Tree. Celebrate the 4th of July with Dollar Days at Dollar Tree, where everything's $1. Get backyard barbecue and party supplies, summer toys, and bonus buy savings on basics. Dollar Tree, where everything's $1. The Coast Guard is investigating why a speeding boat went out of control during the Thunder on the Narrows race on Sunday. It crashed into other boats carrying spectators and killed a 7-year-old girl, Julianne Rosella. Paul Schlotterbeck is with the Kent Island Fire Department.
If he loses a rudder, he no longer has steering or control of that boat. The boats don't have brakes. And he's moving 120 miles an hour. Even if he cuts the motor, it's still going to go where it's going to go. 3 others were hospitalized with injuries. The United Church of Christ is urging the Redskins to change the team name. The Reverend Linda Jaramillo says it's offensive and directly harmful to the public health and well-being of Native Americans. The church has been denouncing the use of Native American names for sports teams since 1991 and plans to give the Cleveland Indians a petition today. The D.C. Summer Jobs Program is underway. For the first time, those between 22 and 24 years old are being allowed to participate, along with those 21 and younger.
I found too many that were not connected or underemployed or lacking direction and vision, and in some cases lacking hope.
Mayor Bowser met with a few of the 15,000 participants at yesterday's orientation session. The Nationals start a 3-game series tonight in Atlanta. The Rangers jumped all over Orioles starter Bud Norris for 5 runs in 6 innings.
It's a tough game. You understand, quarter of an inch really can change, a barrel in too much of a jam. So I know what I have. I know what I can do, and I'm excited to just keep working through it. And I know that these guys have really been pushing me and keep patting me on the butt, and that's pretty encouraging too.
Texas won 8-1, hitting 4 homers off Norris. His record's now 2-7. This report brought to you by the Foundation for a Better Life. Commitment, pass it on, from the Foundation for a Better Life at values.com. I'm John Lewis. When you're looking for news from Black America, go to news1.com.
Welcome back to Beyond Just Talk with your host, S.L. Young.
All right, folks, welcome back. Hopefully you're enjoying today's show. Earlier we had Torrey Berry on and just giving us some of his delightful music sounds, and we'll probably have an opportunity to squeeze him in again before the end of the show, thanks to Beth allowing some of her time to be given to her because she, maybe for a little bit for selfish reasons, because she's got a song that she wants to hear. But we're also enjoying our conversation with Beth Jannery, someone who I consider to be one of the winds beneath my wings. And so prior to the break, we were talking about your background a little bit. And so what was the first significant writing project that you really enjoyed?
Oh, gosh, there's so many. I think that's hard, very hard for a writer to say, what is the one, what is that one? I can tell you that the process of writing my first novel was petrifying, I guess. Let me just tell you a little bit about Finding Grace again. So there's this character, Reagan Concord. She's our main character. There's moments when you may love her, and there's moments when you're like, Reagan, just get your life together. But there's a very painful opening without giving the whole story, the whole novel away. Stephen King is one of my mentors. He doesn't know it, though. Hey, Stephen.
Mentor in your head, right?
Yeah. I hope we meet one day. Invite me to your office. But we have the same writing style. He the same process for writing. He suggests that there's no such thing as writer's block. You sit down and you write and you go through the process. You just purge it all out. And these characters live in your head. And then you just put it all on paper or on the computer. Then there's the rewriting and the editing process. And that's kind of my process. So this character, Reagan, came to my head. The whole novel is set in Boston, and then it takes place out in the Berkshires of Massachusetts, which is basically my home where I grew up. I'm a New England girl. So he also says, write about what scares you the most. Write about what you're afraid of. And I am afraid of losing my daughter. Okay, that is my greatest fear as a mother. So I wrote about this character, Reagan, who is texting while driving. And in chapter 1, she's in a horrific accident, and it's her fault because she's texting. And Grace, her kindergarten-age daughter, is killed. And I won't go into all of it. It was really very painful to write. I did a lot of interviews with people who had faced loss. But the story that means the most to me is about, how do we begin again? How do we face failure and heartache and devastation and loss and death? And can we ever pick up the pieces? How do we start over? How do we begin again? How do we find Grace again? And the daughter's name in the story is Grace. So at the same time that's happening, which is completely devastating, she also discovers her husband is having an affair with a younger, blonde, more beautiful woman than her. He's a lawyer in Boston, and he's at work all the time, and she confirms her greatest fear, which is that he's cheating. And so she goes through death, divorce, loss, and basically was at the place where you were at, Sly, where she wants to kill herself. She doesn't think she doesn't think there's a reason for living. How can she possibly go on? And the story unfolds in an incredible way. By the end of the novel, she's a different person because of God's grace, because of the people that she meets. And I will say, it's not everyone's cup of tea. There's some sex in there, and my mom was not happy.
Oh, no, not mom reading it.
No, so Reagan, I forgot. So Reagan goes off to the Berkshires to this beautiful country inn, and she moves and she packs up her belongings to start again, where no one knows her. No one knows what happens. And she meets this cast of characters at this beautiful New England country inn, and a lot of shenanigans start to happen. And she really uses it as an escape, drinking and sex and all these distractions so that she can get outside of herself. But there's a moment, and I think we all have this moment. I think this is what the readers really connect with. This is what I hear most from readers. There's a moment when she has to feel her feelings, and she has to do that alone, and she has to do it in order to move on.
And so was this the project that made you fall in love with writing, or was there something else?
Oh, no. I'm sorry. So, yeah, I never even answered your question. I went off on a tangent. The project that made me fall in love with writing, yeah, it's definitely my first novel. But true to my heart, I mean, I'm a nonfiction writer. I'm a reporter. that's my true love. And I think probably doing stories when I was covering the Pentagon or when I lived in Thailand, I worked for The Nation, which was the largest English language paper.
Yeah, and I want to get to that in just a
love
moment.
covering the news because in the world, there's stories around us everywhere. And, as a reporter, you have a right, nobody has to answer your questions, but that's your job to ask questions. So you could pretty much ask anything that you want.
Right.
When I was covering the Navy and the Marine Corps, I'm supposed to be writing about ships and weapon systems. And I found myself asking these admirals and generals about resilience and how to be a leader and all the stuff that went on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'm really drawn to. So I think that's where I really fell in love with the craft.
And it's sort of interesting that you talk about writing on the inside. And that's something that we don't normally often address, and especially being men, we don't necessarily want to address those emotional feelings and those things that we need to deal with. And so when we learn to do that, that actually allows us to open up a little bit more than we would otherwise. So what I want to do now is I want to shift a little bit and talk about your background. You have a master's degree from Boston University in broadcast journalism. However, your work is primarily in written journalism. So why did you make this change?
The world changed, really. So, at George Mason, we have this incredible journalism program now where there's no longer one track. There's not just print. There's not just broadcast. Everything is multimedia journalism.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know, it just kind of happened naturally. I originally wanted to do broadcast news, and I did that. There was a show in Thailand that we started it was the first year of free press. In Thailand. It was a crazy place to be in the 90s. And we started a show called Good Morning Thailand and Face the Nation. And that was broadcast. But then I started doing feature articles. And I remember this one story, to get back to that question about what was the one I really fell in love with. And this was a print story. I didn't do this for broadcast. It was a story about slum children. That's what they were called in Bangkok. And I fell in love with these kids. They're in my mind even today. And I wrote this story about slum kids and the orphans in Thailand, and they're sold for prostitution at such a young age. It's heartbreaking.
It is.
I came back. I wanted to adopt 10 of them, right? But I know I can't. That's not realistic. So, writing is a way to bring someone's story to a larger audience. Like what you're doing right now, you're bringing the story of this musician, right? Or you're bringing the story of me. I'm just a struggling writer to a wider audience.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe they'll read my books. I get to write stories about people that I'm drawn to, and hopefully more people can find out about them.
And, that's one of the most important reasons that I started this show was to discover undiscovered talent, because I know as a struggling author as well, trying to make it out here on a lot of different levels, that getting that first break is very, very difficult, because folks will say, have you ever been on air before? Well, no. Well, then you're not ready for our show. Well, how do I get ready for your show if you don't allow me to get on? So what I want to do, it's so hard. And what I want to do is to create a platform so that folks like yourself and Torrey can come out and be introduced to folks that they wouldn't otherwise have an opportunity to be introduced to. So what was your first professional writing job? So at 21, you worked for CNN's investigative reporting unit.
That was the best training ground ever.
Mm-hmm.
I was thrown in. I was 20. It was an internship I did my junior year of college. I went to a small school out in Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did this internship program where I got to move out to DC. I actually turned 21 while I was there, but I'm friends with the people today. They were senior editors and senior producers and senior reporters that worked in this very unique and small and challenging environment at CNN at the time called, let me see if I can remember the name. It was called the Special Assignment Unit. It was all investigative journalism.
Mm-hmm.
And from that moment on, I was like, there's nothing better than being this inquisitive and asking questions. And, the world of journalism has changed so much, and we get slammed all the time, and with good reason.
Mm-hmm.
But that truth-seeking and being able to ask questions and pursue stories that we want to cover, that was my training ground. I got that. I got what I needed there, and I'm so thankful to the to the people at CNN that I got to work with. Actually, now at George Mason this semester, we've just hired an adjunct faculty from a senior producer from CNN. So it's kind of come full circle, and I got to hire her. I mean, how cool is that?
Yeah.
It's pretty awesome.
And then you also worked at The Nation, the largest English language newspaper in Bangkok, Thailand, writing feature articles and covering politics. So while you were there, did you live in Thailand?
Yeah, I lived right in Bangkok. I lived on, let's see if I can get the language, Soi Sukhumvit Galsip Song, which means Street 93.
Okay.
It was a crazy place and so
how
much
did you get
fun.
that job?
So I got that job, and you're going to love the story because it's something you would do. When I was at Boston University as a grad student, I mean, who was I to ask anybody for anything, right? I'm just starting out in my career. There was a Nieman Fellow at Harvard who came to speak. That's the highest fellowship you can get in journalism. He was at Harvard, and he came to my classroom, and I set up an appointment with him. A couple weeks later, I remember being so nervous. He was the editor of The Nation, and he had come to study in the United States. You know, he's a midlife kind of guy, and he was here to study, to bring back, you know, knowledge to the Thai paper. And I went to him, and we had lunch, and I said, Sopan Angara, will you hire me? And he, you know, his face was probably like, what is this person talking about? And he's like, let me see your clips. Let me see the work you've done. By the end of our hour together, he hired me. I had to finish my master's degree, of course. But the second I was done, I was on a plane and I moved to Thailand.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, taking advantage of opportunity. And sometimes you have to ask for things, right?
Right. Okay. So that's such a great point. You have to ask for what you want, right? You have to ask. The guy I wanted to tell you about, Hillel Black, was the guy I asked for help in writing these novels. And I was...
Well, why don't we hold off on that story because we're getting ready to go into a break. But what I want to do before we go into break is talk about some other things that happened later in your career. So you were a communications officer for Harvard University's John F. Kennedy School of Government. And then you also were editor for Inside Washington and Inside the Navy. And then you've also written for various other military and leadership magazines. And then you also are doing your work at George Mason. But we'll talk about what you were starting to bring up and this right after the break.
News Talk 1450 WOL AM, where information is power.
Good morning. This WL Traffic Update is brought to you by Jiffy Lube. 295 southbound, still pretty slow as you get down from Benning Road to East Capitol Street, but nothing in the way there. Northbound 295, we're okay. Baltimore-Washington Parkway, heading out of town right now, we're okay as you leave New York Avenue or 201, and we're in good shape on Route 50, heading inbound from the Beltway past Chevrolet into town onto New York Avenue and onto 295. Have you discovered the value of Jiffy Lube's signature service oil change? Not just an oil change, Jiffy Lube checks vital fluids, tire pressure, lights, wipers, even vacuums the interior. JiffyLubeDC.com. Now your WOL weather forecast brought to you by Teach and the Ad Council. Afternoon thunderstorm possible today, high near 88. Some more storms possible overnight down to 70. Tomorrow, clouds and sun, high near 88. If you ever wanted to be a teacher, the time's now. Amazing things are happening in teaching today. Find out more at teach.org. Make more, teach. Steve Hirschhorn for News Talk 1450 WOL AM, where information is power.
Welcome back to Beyond Just Talk with your host, S.L. Young.
All right, folks, welcome back. You'll have one more time one more chance to join the conversation. If you like, you can dial in at 1-800-450-7876. But before we start up again with our conversation with Beth Jannery, we're going to give Torrey Berry another opportunity to please us with some of his delightful sounds.
I see the crystal raindrops fall, and the beauty of it all is when the sun comes shining through to make those rainbows in my mind. When I think of you sometime, I want to spend some time with you, just the two of us. We can make it if we try, just the two of us. Just the two of us, just the two of us. Building castles way up high, just the two of us, you and I. We look for love, no time for tears. Wasted water's all that is, and it don't make no flowers bloom. Good thing might come to those who wait, but not for those who wait too late. We gotta go for all we know, just two of us. We can make it if we try, just two of us. Just two of us, just the two of us. Building castles way up high, just the two of us, you and I. I hear the crystal raindrops fall on the window down the hall, and it becomes the morning dew. And darling, when the morning comes and I see the morning sun, I wanna be the one with you, just the two of us. We can make it if we try, just the two of us. Just the two of us, just the two of us. Building castles way up high, just the two of us, you and I.
All right, folks. Thank you, Torrey Berry, for that song. Thank you
for the opportunity.
All right. So back to you, Beth.
Wow, thank you for that. I will say that was my request, but I think it's going out to his girl. No, okay,
we were joking about it in the studio because she said, "Well, you should dedicate it to my girl Beth." I said,
did.
"Well, his girl might be Jenny, so I don't think his girl Jenny would appreciate that." But just to clear things up, he is available. So
he's got some rhythm, I'll tell you. But yeah, that was good. Thank you.
Prior to the break, we were talking about your mentor, Hillel Black. I think you were starting to tell us a story about that.
Thank you. I'm just so honored to even be able to talk about Hillel. Imagine this. Gosh, I don't even know how old he is. 80 plus probably, but a real old school editor from New York City. Remember MASH? Do you remember before the show MASH? Before the show MASH, there was a movie called MASH, and before the movie, there was a book, and it's a New York Times best-selling book. Hillel is probably the editor to 20 or so best-selling New York Times books. So I asked this guy for help. Can you imagine this girl from nowhere heads off to New York City? Well, actually, I contacted him on via phone and email first, and he said, "I'll absolutely help you." I sent him a draft of Finding Grace Again, and he said, "Come on out to New York," and he invited me to be his guest in his home, and it's probably one of the best memories a girl writer could have. So I'm in his home. He's telling me everything that's wrong with my novel, and then he's telling me everything he loves about it. So he says, you know, of course, me having fear about being a novelist, thinks I shouldn't do this. He's going to tell me to go back to the drawing board and never write again. And actually the opposite happened. He was the one who inspired me. And he said, "Beth, be relentless. It only takes one." So all of those no's that I got, it took one yes. I remember calling him that day when a publisher said, "Yes, we want to publish your book." And I said, "Hillel, what do I do?" And he's like, "What do you mean? You say yes, and you take that opportunity." And I've actually dedicated the book in part to him. So thank you, Hillel. Yeah, so that's my New York City editor. I have a New York City editor. Isn't that crazy?
Well, that's crazy and cool all at the same time. And so you currently teach journalism at the George Mason University, along with being the director of the journalism program. So why did you decide to teach?
I can't not teach. It is so in my blood. Actually, my father was a professor. My dad was a music professor, and he was a cellist and a pianist and a composer and a theorist. And while I have none of that talent at all, I have a great love for music, and I have such a great love for the craft of writing and for just art in general. Teaching is my way of giving back. I think of it as service work. When I go into work every day to meet with my students, I'm happy. I'm full of gratitude. And when you're up giving a lecture, you're not thinking about yourself at all.
No.
You completely get out of ego, you get out of self, and there are those moments, it's hard sometimes when you don't feel like you're connecting with the students, but then there's those moments when grace happens and it's inspiring and you have those moments of connection. I had one student this past semester who's gone off to be a backpack journalist, and another one who got hired, working for a mainstream publication, and just cool stuff happens and lives are created and you get to watch their careers. And then I start to feel a little old, but I love teaching.
But I don't know if it's necessarily about being old, but it's that reward for knowing that you've had the opportunity to contribute to somebody else's journey that will always keep us young.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love that. I mean, I'm only 44, so
not old at all.
I know. But yeah, it's so cool when my students keep in touch with me, and then they go off into their world, and they'll say like, "Hey, professor, it really meant a lot when you took the time to meet with me, for extra office hours, or when they're struggling with their writing, just like I struggled." I mean, grammar is not my strong suit, and I had to ask for help and have my own teachers along the way.
And then the other thing that I wanted to ask just quickly is, so what are your responsibilities as the director of journalism?
So we have this incredible Department of Communication, and I'm so lucky to have a home there for our journalism program. You can actually get a concentration in journalism as a student. You can get a minor in journalism, or if you're into sports, if you want to work for ESPN or Sports Center or something like that, you can get a sport communication minor. So I advise all the journalism students. We also have a Society of Professional Journalists chapter at Mason. So you can be a communication major, but you can minor in journalism and really work on your writing. We push original reporting. We really push strong writing, editing, and the multimedia journalism track. So it's a really good place to work. And you've been to Mason recently, right? I know you do some work over there as well. And that place is growing. We have an incredible president who is just so innovative. And I know it's a really fun place to work.
And one of the things I want to make sure that we do, because I don't want to get to the end of the show and then we're all of a sudden we're rushing. So just a reminder, some of Beth's books are Beth Jannery, that is, The Admiral's Daughter, Finding Grace Again, Simple Grace, Leaving a Meaningful Life. My mom's going to be like cringing every time I say this. Shut the hell up. 101 Reasons to Appreciate Your Life. And What's the Story? The Art of Writing and Communication. So where can folks get copies of your books?
Oh, you're awesome. Thanks for the plug. So the easiest is Amazon.com. I have an author page there. Just type in my last name, Jannery, Jannery. I have a website. It's author.bethjannery.wordpress.com. And then they can just contact me directly. My email is bethjannery@gmail.com. Or if you want to come to Mason, get in touch with me. If you're thinking about coming to college, it's bjannery, BJANNERY, @gmu.edu.
And then before we start to get towards the end of the show here, because we're on the tail end of the show, you had another book there, The Admiral's Daughter. Can you tell us quickly about that?
Oh, my gosh. So this character, if you like Reagan Concord in Finding Grace Again, Lacey Redmond in The Admiral's Daughter is a very, very different kind of woman. She is a CIA. Well, she works for the CIA. Let's just say that. She's actually a triple agent. The story starts off, it's a very sexy spy thriller. And then it turns into a life-changing story for this character, Lacey, who went to the Naval Academy. She follows in her father's footsteps. He was an admiral, Admiral Redmond. And she has this moment in life where she has to decide, do I continue on this path or do I choose a new journey? So I'd love for you to read The Admiral's Daughter and find out what happens.
And we're going to have to leave it there because I'm going to give Torrey an opportunity to play us out in just a moment. So I'm going to go ahead and close the show a little bit early today. I hope that you enjoyed today's show. On next week's show, my guest will be Kier Jr. Spates, who is a rising comedic star, a sought-after act that partners with some of entertainment's most bankable names, and the ambassador for the Sickle Cell Disease Association of America. Remember, your candle is fueled from within, so don't let anyone reduce or block the fuel to maximize its brightness. Enjoy the rest of your week. Until next time, my friends, have a good one, and we'll listen to Torrey as we head out for the show.
This one is dedicated to Beth Jannery.
I've got sunshine on a cloudy day.
Sorry, tried to get you back in.
WOL.
That was so good.
All right.
WOL Washington, WPRS HD2 Waldorf, WKYS HD2 Washington, WMMJ HD2 Bethesda, a Radio 1 station, and worldwide at WOL DC News.com.